My name is Rebecca Lowell, and I'm with the Nebraska Veterans Memorial Foundation's Share Your Story project. Bellevue University is a sponsor of the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial Park project. I am here at the 38th Annual Nebraska Vietnam Veteran Reunion with Army veteran Henry Velez, who has agreed to share his story for the Library of Congress Veteran History Project and the Nebraska Vietnam Veteran Memorial Park. Henry, let's start with your full name and where you were born.
I am Dr. Henry Velez now, but in 1968 I was Sergeant Henry Velez. So I was born in New York City, the Bronx, which is one of the boroughs of New York City.
Did you grow up there?
For the first 5 years.
Okay.
So I was born March 10th, 1948.
And how big were you from a big family? Did you have a lot of brothers and sisters? Or?
Well, at that time, there was still the nuclear family. So we lived on Simpson Street, which was an interesting, if you understand New York City is a series of transitions where certain people move into one area and other people flee. That's what they really do. They flee. Okay. I was going to say they move out, but really they flee.
Migrate.
yeah, they flee. So anyway, so at that time, that part was a very nice area, the South Bronx, and it was basically a Jewish area, and Puerto Ricans. That's my family came from Puerto Rico, and we started moving in. They started moving out, but it was still really, really nice. And not anymore, but it was really, really nice. So I grew up there for the first 5 years, and it was, like I said, a transitional neighborhood because we were coming in and others were going out, and that was just the beginning of a process which still continues in New York City.
Right.
A real problem too.
Okay. And where did you go to school? Like starting with grade school through high school?
I went to first grade, and I think I was either 4 years old or 5 years old because I made the cutoffs, right? And it's always been public school. Mm-hmm. So I went to public school in the first grade. And then in 1954, we moved to Brooklyn, a New York City Housing Authority housing project, which are really, there's a lot of politics in here, so you're going to know. I'm a very political person, so I'm warning you, which they're really containment wards for poor people, you know?
Okay.
But anyway, so we went there in 1954. And that was a very, very interesting place because at that time, everybody was poor. You know, the working class, as you know, after World War II just started to take off. And so there were Jews, Italians, Irish, blacks, Hispanics. It was just a real potpourri of people, of nationalities. And we stayed in the housing projects for a long, long time, and the aim of everyone in the housing project was to get out. That's it, to get out. And so, so you understand that, right? You've heard this story before, right? So I think about a year or two before I graduated high school in 1965. And then I went to work. My training was in electronics, and I went to work originally for Westinghouse. And this, if you know New York City, on 50th Street and 10th Avenue, there's a huge building with no windows, and that's where the telephone company had one of its initial or original phone exchanges. Oh. And it didn't have windows because it was important to control temperatures and things like that. So I worked there for a while, and then I went to RCA Communications, which was Telex, and that was I think David Sarnoff was the RCA guy. He's the one who took the distress call on the Titanic, and So anyway, it was all very historical. And I worked there until I was drafted.
Okay, so
Now, but there's an interesting thing about New York City and the draft, which I think is really interesting to share, and I
Okay.
think people would want to know. So we're on the block, and when, after graduating high school, becoming 18 and registering with the draft and all that, the whole thing was, hey man, did you get your tokens? And the reason for that was it was in New York City at that time, you could go anywhere with 2 tokens. No, you're looking at me like I'm
No,
crazy.
I'm here. No,
Yeah,
I'm here.
okay. So the draft board at that time, when you got your notice to report, would send you the draft notice, and they would tape 2 tokens onto the draft notice because you could not have an excuse not to go. All right. So we all waited for our tokens after we graduated high school, and after I graduated high school, I was 17, and we were poor. I didn't go to college, so I didn't have a deferment. So I worked, and
you went.
and I got drafted like everybody else, like my brothers, like Henry Leon Bruno, and everybody, So.
And who did you leave behind when you got drafted?
My family, my 2 brothers, mother and father, and friends, of course.
Okay. Where did you go to? You joined the Army, or you were drafted into the Army?
Right. I was drafted into the Army,
Okay, so then you had boot camp at...
Columbia, South Carolina,
Okay.
which was Fort Jackson.
Okay, and then you went on to an AIT?
Right, well, AIT is interesting too, has to be explained. AIT is called Advanced Individual Training,
Right.
but for us, it was Advanced Infantry Training.
Absolutely.
And then for that, I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Okay. Did you have any particular specialties or anything that you trained in, or you just were straight infantry? Infantry all the way.
Okay, you see, but that's all has another political thing. I don't know if you saw the Ken Burns on PBS on the draft, and if you were poor, if you were black, if you were Hispanic, guess what? You
didn't have options.
No, you were going to get drafted, and you were going to the infantry.
Okay.
And that's the way it was.
Okay. What would you say was the best part of your training?
None.
The worst part?
Actually, it was all bad. But actually, the best part, I think, was I went in, I weighed 194 pounds, and I got back from advanced infantry training, I weighed 137 pounds. And obviously you can see I've kept it off, So that was probably the best part. That I lost all this weight that I never wanted to anyway, so.
Do any of your instructors stand out as particularly good, bad, or indifferent? Or?
No, certain instructors stood out due to their sadistic qualities. That's what I remember. And I remember in in basic training, I was a fat kid. Okay, so we're running, and I'm running, I'm huffing and puffing. I can't keep up, and I'm right in front of this little guy who just whatever, and he just falls down out of exhaustion, and this second lieutenant comes up to him and says to him, "Boy, who authorized you to die in my formation?" And I said, "Oh man, I got to keep going." So I just took off, and I said, "Okay, I'm not gonna fall because I don't want that sadistic second lieutenant on my." And then there was another one, and he got up there, and we weren't allowed to eat. When we had to eat, it was eat up and get out. You weren't allowed to talk, nothing like this. You weren't, because they just wanted to get you in and out of there. So this guy comes up, and I forgot whether he was in I think it was basic, right? And he gets up there and he says, "I am Sergeant so-and-so, and I am the MMFIC." And then, of course, we're all looking, and he says, "Well, I'll tell you what the MMFIC, it's the mean motherfucker in charge, And I says, "Okay, that's another one I don't want to get involved with, So this was, that's the sort of things that I remember. And then the last thing, at Columbia, at Fort Jackson, they used to torture us because right outside the barracks there was a place called Drag Ass Hill, and it was basically a vertical drop. It was a perfect ski slope, but for recruits. So what they would do to torture us, they'd make us go all the way down and then all the way up. Sometimes they'd make us low crawl all the way up. The Army was a very sadistic place at that time,
Okay, so we know how you feel about that now.
Oh yeah, right, yeah, you know the impression it left on me, but it's behind me.
Yeah. Now, when you qualified, what weapons did you qualify with? And what,
okay, that's another interesting story, right? This is the Army, right? I tell you, this is worth talking, right? So, I couldn't run because I was, a little portly, right? So
back then, that was all back then.
Yeah, I was a little portly in those days, so I couldn't run. And there was always this competition from all the training companies, right? So the day that if that target came up, and we were trained on the M1 Garand, that was the World War II rifle, right? Mm-hmm. That target came up, it went right down, And so I distinguished myself as good with a rifle. And so what they did was, the guys who couldn't shoot but who could run, right? So that day when we were qualifying, my name tag changed, I think, a half a dozen times because I had to shoot for 6 different guys, right? And somebody, of course, ran for me,
How was your PFT score that day?
yeah, right. Yeah, it was. So I was a very good shot. Yeah, I was good with. But I've always had technical abilities anyway, so.
So then you went over to Vietnam. Oh, that big day. You remember that day?
Yeah, July 16th, 1968.
Where did you serve?
Okay, so that's another interesting thing about the sadism of the Army, right? So everybody goes into it just goes across the boards. So everybody went to the replacement battalion, which in Long Binh, which, by the way, I went back to Vietnam in 2018 for closure. And so we get there, and this guy is there, and he says, "I'm going home, I'm going back to the world, And then he starts telling me all this gory stuff, how this guy got killed and that guy got killed. And I'm saying to myself, what are you telling me this for, But again, this is what I remember. That was all part of the, it was, I recently did a little write-up for my hospital. They asked me what I thought,
Mm-hmm.
And I just put, there was an illegal and immoral war. And our CEO, Audrey Myers, is just a really nice, progressive human being, And they published it. I knew they were going to do it, but I had a little trepidation. Maybe they weren't going to do it, but they published it. And actually, a bunch of my colleagues got back to me and said, "That was great. That was really, really great. We want to congratulate you on having the courage to do that." So anyway.
And that's why I think the Share Your Story project is so important, because you have the opportunity to share that story that had basically been squashed down inside of you for so many years.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, so you were in actual combat then?
Yes, I went, my first fire support base was Rakhine, which is about 12 miles southeast of Saigon. And I got there the first week in August, and then maybe, I don't know, a couple of days later, and he's here today, went out on our first night ambush, and that was Ray Gruno. He was the second lieutenant, and Roy Register. Roy was killed in action August 27th, 1968. Roy was wounded, you know, and Fred Benson and I, who's here also, we went out to get him. So they gave me the Army Commendation Medal for it with valor, you know. So, but anyway, that's so. It was. So the reason I remember that night was it was my first night on patrol, and they put me out front, and all you're doing is hearing noises and this and the grass, you know, this and that. I'm ready to shit my pants, you know. I'm ready to soil myself, you know, and all of a sudden I lost it, and I just ripped out a clip of M16, you know, 20 rounds, zip right through, you know. So Roy and Roy Register and Bruno come running up to me and they say, "What's up? What's up?" I said, "I thought I heard something. I don't know." But the reason I love those guys, right, is that they just said to me, "Good job, soldier. It's good. It's better that you did what you did, you know." And they calmed me down and whatever. And you know, it was. That's the kind of things that always make a difference to me, you know, as a person. I guess I'm a healer, so that's why these things make a difference. And so I'll always remember. Well, Roy is no longer with us. Actually, we talked about him just now. Ray is here, and it's just, and Fred is here, and he was next to me when we went out to get. So it's just, it's important.
That camaraderie is important, and it's commendable for you. I mean, we are 50 years later.
55.
55 years later,
Yeah,
you're still looking at.
So I was infantry, and then my first actual firefight, we came into a hot landing zone. That means as we came in, they were shooting like crazy, you know. And I remember, and that I remember too, was I hit the ground, and it was the rainy season, so I was in knees deep to mud, you know. And at that time, the new guys, all they got was they put all the ordnance on you, you know, like we were pack mules, you know. and we hit the mud, and all of a sudden I realized what it meant to have rubbery knees.
Okay.
My knees were like rubber. But I said, okay, they're like rubber, but I just did everything I could and got behind the dike, and I was huffing and puffing. I used to smoke cigarettes, by the way, at that time. I used to smoke cigarettes. And,
Oh, wow.
And I was really huffing and puffing. But anyway, that was my first firefight, coming into a hot landing zone.
How did you stay in touch with family or friends back home?
Letters.
Just
Letters and waiting for your care packages, you know. So it was like, you know, that's just one. Care packages were really great.
Awesome. What was your best care package, you think?
It didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
It didn't matter as long as they had food in there, you know. Yeah.
When you weren't on duty, did you do anything for recreation?
Do you really want to know?
Absolutely. It's your story.
Yeah, the local brothels. What is that? Yeah, like I said, you really want to know? It was the local brothels, you know. We were all 20 years old and horny, you know. I mean, that's what and then of course beer, you know.
And beer.
But beer was secondary. The brothels were the primary focus, you know.
Was there anything that you or people that you were served with, was there anything that they did for a sense of security or good luck or, you know, good karma that they tried to bring about them?
No, it was just day-to-day existence.
Okay.
That's all. And you know, the only thing that some people did, and this was another thing, was there were some people who it was called shamming, and there was shamming. Okay, you know what a sham is, right?
I know what a sham is.
Right. Well, shamming is the process. I'm giving you a real education, right? Okay. So shamming was, we were all on the line, infantry, right? And there were guys, and there was this guy. His name was Butler, right?
Okay.
And we called him Sam the Sham because he always found an excuse to not go out to the field. I mean, he was such an inventor. And so he was never out there because he would always find an excuse and to sham, you know. So that was that was the only rituals that, but most of us, we went out. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think was the best part of your experience over in Vietnam?
I grew up.
You grew up. I think the military does that for a lot of people.
Yeah. Vietnam, you have to remember, people looked at me, I'm from New York City, oh, he's fast, and he's this, and he's that. I was another provincial kid from Brooklyn, from a small province, a section of Brooklyn. It was provincial. It was provincial living, and I knew as much as the country boys. They probably knew more than I did, you know what I mean? And as far as, the reality of life and whatever, and how things go. And I grew up, I just grew up, and it really, really set the stage for everything that came afterwards, because that first firefight, when it came into that hot landing zone, okay, so it came in, I finally made it to a dike, and I'm huffing and puffing, and you have to realize that we were up in the air for 30 minutes, circling and circling, and they were napalming that wood line, 500-pound bombs. Puff the Magic Dragon was up there. Puff was a C-47 with 8 rows of miniguns, right? And they put out 16,000 rounds per minute, and then incessant artillery, and 6 and 8 inch guns, big guns, just pounding that wood line. And despite all of that, when the word came to come in, right? We're coming in, and they're still there, and they're really pissed off, and it's intense small arms fire, because that's really all they had, intense small arms fire. And I'm looking, and I see the side of the helicopter, ping, 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 ping. I said, oh man, this is serious, Anyway, so when I hit the ground, I had 2 thoughts. Number one, we have no right being here. These people, I was there because I was drafted, I had to go.
Right.
And these people, after all that abuse that we just put them through, they're still there and they're still fighting, And then the second thought I had was, if I had gone to college, I wouldn't be here. So I said to myself, I'm going to get out of here and I'm going back to school. It's over for me, but my son will never go, And so I'm going to get an education, and I'm going to make some money, and I'm going to be able to afford to send my son to college, and which I did. And
He wasn't any more than.
No, and he graduated summa cum laude, from New Jersey Institute of Technology as a mechanical engineer, and so.
Now, let's talk about the day when you got called back. What did it feel like to know you were going to be leaving?
I was scared.
I find a lot of veterans say something like that.
I was plain and simple.
Dangerous till the day you put your foot down.
I was scared. I was really, really scared.
Where were you at the time? When you found out you were leaving, where were you? Were you on Liberty? Were you just?
Oh no! When I left Georgia, I already had orders. I had orders.
No, I'm talking about leaving Vietnam.
Oh, no! When I went to Vietnam, I was scared.
Okay.
When I left Vietnam, I was very happy.
Okay.
Oh yeah. We're going back. We're going home.
Okay.
That's an interesting story too, if you'd like to hear it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Tan Son Nhut, right? So we were the first group pulled out by Tricky Dick Nixon.
Okay.
You remember that name?
Yes, I do.
And so what they did was, I tell you, this is a story worth telling.
That's okay.
So we were the first. Actually, he pulled out 3rd Brigade of 9th Infantry, right? We were the first brigade to come home. And what they really did was they took all the short-timers from all the other 9th Infantry and they brought them together, and they put 3rd Brigade on stand down, and then all the other people that were in my company, they went to other brigades, the ones who still had time. So they took us to Dong Tam, which was at that time 9th Infantry Division headquarters, right? And we stayed on the USS Benoit, which was a Navy ship, right outside of Dongtam Harbor, right? And what we did was they taught us to march again. And so, hey, we were getting hot food 3 times a day, right? Showers at night, and the boat was air conditioned. We'll do anything they want, and we were going home, you know? So that's what we did, and I was just ecstatic. And so anyway, so the day comes, okay, you're going home. So we go from the boat to Dongtam. It was like a 5-minute ride on some sort of craft or whatever. And then Chinooks, aka shithooks, I don't know if you've ever heard that name, but we call them shithooks, right? So the Chinooks, the tandem rotor helicopters, pick us up. And then again, the sadism. It's like, there was no shortage of sadism. Oh yeah, I knew these guys. Somebody on the boat told us they were going, and they got to Tonsanut, and mortars came in, and they killed them all, and this and that. And I said, oh man, please, so just let me go home, okay? So anyway, so there was no shortage of sadism in the Army, you know? So anyway, we get to Tonsanut. The airplane rolls in, right, real quick. Turns around. It doesn't shut off the outboard engine. They keep that on. They shut off the inboard, of course, because we don't want to get sucked in while we're boarding. And, you know, there were no jetways or anything like that, right? You know, yeah, you walked up, right? And the door opens, and this tall, beautiful, blonde woman goes, and everybody's just like, oh, God, oh my God, you know? It's like, are there still any of those out there, you know? So, but this is, you know, the horny GIs, you know, the usual. So we get on the airplane. So she says to us, you got to get on this airplane real quick. And we all look at each other and say, oh yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I tell you, believe me, no problems. So we get on the airplane. It's 110 degrees. We get on. They shut the doors. There's no air conditioning, nothing, right? And then we start rolling the taxi, and then, you know, we rotate, and then we're going straight up. And then, all of a sudden, the air conditioning comes on. You can't see in front of you because all that moisture condenses, right? You don't see the moisture, you don't see anybody, but we all knew one thing. We were at 3,000 feet, because at 3,000 feet, we were safe. And we all knew that. We were infantry. We knew what 3,000 feet was, you know, and we knew, and then there was this incredible sigh of relief from it. It was like rehearsed, like the choir, you know, and the smoke, and then everybody just laid back. And the next stop was Japan. You know, it was just really, really nice. So that's what it was when we left.
Did you return back home to New York then?
No, so we went to, and then we came back to Fort Lewis in Washington, where I left from, right? And then they housed us, and they gave us all new uniforms and this and that, and they cleaned us up, because then we had to march. And then we were told, don't do this and don't do that, and blah, blah, watch out for the hippies, etc., etc., etc. And so we marched, and this was all, you know, this is the politicians, Tricky Dick, trying to show the world that he's doing the right thing, right? And so we marched, and then after we marched, they took us to the Seattle or something like that, Dome or whatever, where they gave us salmon and baked beans and, you know, low potency beer, 3.2%, you know? We called it 3.2, and you might remember Merrily Rushmore, Angel in the Morning.
I do.
And she's up there playing, and you got 1,000, I hate to keep saying, 1,000 horny GIs there, and there's this beautiful blonde woman singing this great song and all like that, and we're both just panting and dying, and we don't care if we ever go home, you know, we were just happy to be there, you know. So that's how it kind of ended. Then we went back, and then the hard part was saying goodbye to our guys, you know, because whatever, and no knowledge of when we're going to see them again. But, you know, of course we said, we'll stay in touch, and we'll stay, but, you know, that's just the way it goes. It took me 40 years to find Ray Gruno, because after we dusted him off, Fred and I pulled him back and we dusted him off, and I always wondered what happened to him, And here he is today, and here we are together.
How did your family and your community feel about you when you came back from your service?
Oh, my family was happy to see me, of course, New York City, there's no real communities per se. It's family, and that's what it's all about. But at that time, that's when it was very common for Vietnam vets to get on a water tower and start shooting people, and start shooting people, and people would say, I don't understand. And I would say to them, well, these people, if you knew how they were treated after they got home, we all went because it was our patriotic duty, and we were just, and actually the formation of VVA, Vietnam Veterans of America, was because the American Legion didn't want us then, VFW didn't want us now. Did you know that?
I did.
The VFW didn't want us. They want us now because they don't have any more members and they need somebody to pay the rent, So, so VVA formed, and the motto is never again should one veteran leave another behind, which is basically the infantry model. We don't leave a brother behind, So
I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah. So that's came home, and that was it, and they weren't nice to us and the whole thing, but I have something which in my personality, I'm able to compartmentalize things. If you have any psychology trainings, well, you know what compartmentalization is, right? So I'm able to compartmentalize, and what I did was I got home. So I got home for a month, and then I went back and we played war games in Fort Riley, Kansas, and it was a joke for us, but we had 5 months to go, and that was it. And so January 20th, 1970, Manhattan, Kansas, another airplane. I think I went to St. Louis or something like that, another airplane, and then JFK, and my family was waiting for me. So I got home January 20th, 1970, and August, the first 2 weeks later, I began night school.
Okay.
That's where it all began. I went to night school, and I worked. I went back to my job.
Okay. Did you use any GI Bill or something?
Oh yeah. So what happened was, initially they gave us, I think we were entitled, but it wasn't like my father. When my father came home, the World War II vets, right? Whatever they wanted, it was paid for. Actually, my first doctor, he went to medical school under the GI Bill, but we were given, I think we were given $300 a month initially for 2 years or something like that, or 30 months, something like that.
Okay.
And I used that because I quit my job. And that was a kind of a nice experience too, because my supervisor, Al Muzziello, he was very proud of me that I went and served, and that I came home and that I was going to make something of myself, And when I got accepted into medical school, I started medical school, and I came back just to see him, and he was just like, I was like his hero, And it was just, he was of course, as they would say, the antithesis of all these other people that we came home, So that's, I came home and went to work,
Okay. Do you think your military experience changed the way you approached work or education or anything like that?
No, because I tell people I was born to work.
Okay.
That's just the way it is. And actually, my company commander, who isn't here, Scott Moore, and actually I called him this morning because he lives in Nazareth, PA, about 2 hours from me. We met right after the war, and we've been friends since then. So I called him this morning with all the guys so that they could talk to him, and then he sent me an email back. He says, "Oh, thanks so much for doing that," you know. So I once asked him, I says, "Scott, what kind of soldier was I?" He thought and he thought. He says, "You were the type of person that you had a job to do and you just got it done, you know." And so that's the way I've always been, you know. It's just work is has always been a big part of my life.
Okay. Do you think your military service changed the way that you relate to other people?
No, I think that, again, you know, the real me, not the flesh and blood, but the being, the being part, you know, the soul. I think, you know, I've always been a caring and compassionate person, and I've always felt for people. I have a tremendous sense for social injustice, you know, and so that's just me, you know.
So when you completed your education, your education was all completed, what title did you have?
MD.
MD. Okay, good job.
That's an interesting story too.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, I don't have a college degree. Right? I don't have a 4-year college degree, but I have a doctorate of medicine. And so when I first went to Brooklyn, so I started night school, right, with the intention of going to regular college. And then Dean Dunn of Brooklyn College was the science school of City University, okay? And he says, "If you're a veteran, I want you here." You know, so you didn't have to ask me twice. So I went to day school, right? And then I'm there, and the first time I go there, this is regular 4-year college, and I go into the mess hall, the cafeteria, right? And there's this massive food fight going on, massive food fight. And I look, I said, "Is this what it's all about?" You know? And it was just 18, 19-year-old kids, you know, the babies, you know, babies. And I just remember like it was yesterday. So anyway, I said, "Okay, I'm getting out of here." So, you know, I applied myself. I did very well, you know, 3.7 average, the whole thing. And I went to see a guidance counselor. And I said, "You know, I'm a bit older than most of the kids, and I have more experience, and I understand that if I meet certain core requirements, I can apply for medical school." So he looked at me and he says, "So forget about it," you know, which was the best thing he could have said to me, because my answer was, "Thank you, F you, I'll be back," you know. And actually, when I got accepted, it was nasty of me, but I did go back and rub it in his face a bit, you know. Look, you know, with the payback, it's all right, you know. So I only have 68 credits, and I had all the core credits for medical school, and I got a full scholarship. And at that time, you could. There was a shortage of doctors, so I went to a 3-year program. I would never do it again because it was just brutal. It was lectures, study, lectures, study for 3 years, you know. So I graduated in 1976, all right, and then I did a 1-year internship in internal medicine. Then I went to Mount Sinai in New York City, where I did a 2-year fellowship in environmental and occupational diseases. And from there, I did another year at the Bronx VA. The Bronx VA is where the 4th of July was filmed, Tom Cruise. Yeah, that was raised and it was redone, but I was there. And then from there, so I've got 4 years under my belt, and then from there I went to Stony Brook, Long Island for my pulmonary training, pulmonary fellowship. So in 1982, I went out into the real world and I went into private practice, you know, and that was the story.
Okay. How has your experience affected the way you feel about war and combat in general, and our country's place in that? And
okay, ready?
I'm ready.
I mean, it's American imperialism. Period. That's a simple, you know, American imperialism, and that's what it was. That's what it is, and that's what it'll always be. And there was something at the I think it was the VFW yesterday, where one of the speakers said, when we got home, our greatest desire was that our children, that this should never happen again, all right? And that's the way I always felt. And I remember the first Iraq under Papa Bush, you know? Mm-hmm. I remember I was in the emergency room at the hospital, you know, taking care of a patient, and I just remember the chills. I feel it right now going through all of me when they're announcing on the TV that we were bombing Baghdad, and I said, oh man, they just don't get it, you know, they just don't get it, you know. And so I got out January 20th. A couple of months later, I went to the Manhattan Veterans, the VA hospital. It was a lightning rod for veterans in New York coming home from the war. And at the front gate is my company commander, Scott Moore. I said, Lieutenant Moore, what are you doing here? He says, what are you doing here? I said, yeah, the usual, the VA. And he says to me, I'm recruiting for Vietnam Veterans Against the War, VVAW. You want to join? And I said, I got to get something off my chest, though. I said, what? Al Morris and I were going to frag you because, you know what fragging was, right? Mm-hmm. We were going to frag you because Al had the machine gun and I carried extra ammo, and I was his assistant, right? And he would always put us out in front, you know, and you don't want to be in front, you know. You don't want to be in front. So but you got to understand Scott, he's such a sweet guy. He says, I'm so sorry. I said, don't worry, I was just effing with you, you know, and I says, where do I sign up? And then I signed up my brother. I went home, I told my brother, and he signed up. And that summer, we did Operation RAW, Rapid American Withdrawal, where Scott and I, in Jersey, we went along Route 202, all right? We went along Route 202, informing all of the police in the different towns that we were going to come through as a protest march. And we marched from Jockey Hollow National Park, where Washington laid up in 75, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And we marched from there to Valley Forge, 84 miles.
Wow. And
I was, I had the head platoon. I mean, I was used to walking, you know, and so, I mean, that's all we did. In Vietnam, we walked, and we walked, you know. And so I joined the anti-war movement. And actually, also when I got home, we were in New York City. We did rent strikes against. I was politicized. You know, I got the war politicized me, radicalized me, and we did rent strikes and in buildings that we lived where landlords weren't taking care of it, not giving us enough heat. So we says, okay, you don't do your job, we won't do our job. You're not getting paid, you know. And so we were very, very active in. And I'm still an activist. I'm active in mental health issues, and I support the Vietnam Veterans Against America. I support the Wall. I support monthly. You know what monthly sustainers are, right? Right. I sustain Planned Parenthood for obvious reasons. I sustain ACLU because life is about democracy, the democratic way. even though I didn't fight for democracy, that's what I went there. That was the spirit that I went there for, you know? And so public radio, because a true democracy requires public radio, public TV, public institutions, you know what I mean? And so I support them, monthly sustainer, 2 radio stations, 2 TV stations, Planned Parenthood, ACLU, I support the Wall, I support VVA, and actually I'm going to send you something too, okay? So just give me where I can send a check, all right? Because I think this is such important work, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to send you something because, you know, we cannot be forgotten, you know, our sacrifices, and you know, we're in a really horrible, dark time. We're in a dark, dark time where democracy is really on the line, you know, all over the world. It's not just here. It's all over the world.
Do you consider yourself a patriot?
Oh yeah. I'm a real patriot though. I'm a real patriot. I'm not like Trump or McConnell or these people in Congress or in the Senate who just talk about it, you know. They're not patriots. They're just people who are playing the political game for their own personal gain, and that's it. And if you want to know who else is a patriot, Willie Nelson. Yeah, you know Willie, right? Willie, listen to his songs. That man is a patriot. You know, he is. I like music. I consider myself an audiophile. You know, I've been fortunate. I've been able to buy a really nice high-end system, and I just started streaming. And when you stream, you can do playlists. So I got Willie right up there. You know, and he sings the city of New Orleans is about the decay of the American railroads. You know,
Right.
and then his song "The Promised Land." You know, it just. You said, this guy's a patriot, you know? This guy's a patriot.
But is there anything else that you'd like to share about your story?
No, I think the main thing is that my message to everyone that I meet is accept what's been given to you, good or bad, because when you go into adulthood, you are the captain of your own ship. You are the captain of your own ship. Don't blame your problems on your parents. Don't blame your problems on that you went to war and they screwed you up and this and that, you know. You have choices. And accept what was given to you and always make a choice that's going to benefit you, you know. Don't take the easy way out. Take the right way out, and that's what I tell my patients. So I tell them, you know, accept that you have this problem, because when you do, the solution will come up, you know. And that's what happened. I accepted all of this, and the solutions just kept coming and coming and coming, and like I said, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up, you know.
Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story with us and this very special time that you have, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
Okay, good.
Right.
You want to give me some information that I can, you have a card or something, or I can send a donation to?
We'll take care of that when we get out of here.
Oh, okay, well, I'll go with you. In other words.
All right, take care now.
Okay, good.